22-year-old tech CEO Daksh Gupta says an 80-hour work week is a lifestyle choice.
It earned him death threats and job seekers.
Daksh Gupta is the founder of Greptile, which is an AI code understanding API. Daksh is not afraid to do things a bit differently. They launched their own brand of Greptile energy drinks, and they hand-delivered boxes of cookies with Steve Ballmer's voice inside when you opened it. We talk about the value of doing marketing completely differently, why a lot of people misunderstand what sales actually is, and we talk about how big enterprises are buying AI tools and why that's a bit different to how they buy most other tools. It's a really interesting episode, and Daksh is a very interesting guy, so enjoy. I think we were talking a lot about the importance of being different. And just before coming on here, James from PostHog was putting this announcement out that they're going to let someone else design their billboard.
Yeah.
And so I just put 2 submissions and just wasted half an hour trying to come up with ideas.
Amazing.
And it really, I feel like that was a really good reminder of how no one cares about your billboard, but suddenly if you let random people design your billboard, it's super interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. There's very I think there's realization that there are no rules. Because you think about it, a normal person would be sitting in a boardroom and they'd be like, we should let anyone design the billboard. But you'd never say that out loud because it just sounds so crazy. But I think the really interesting ideas come when you push against the skepticism. You're skeptical of the skepticism and you say, okay, but why, look what's actually wrong with it. What is actually wrong with letting anyone just design our billboard? We'll still vet it so they don't put a slur on it, but anyone, we can let anyone make it, and we can make it a competition, and then that's allowed. Yeah, I think there's some alpha in not shooting down your own wildest ideas.
Yeah, tell me about how the Greptile energy drinks came about. This episode is brought to you by WorkOS. At some point, you're going to land a big customer and they're going to ask you for enterprise features. That's where WorkOS comes in because they give you these features out the box. Features like skim provisioning, SAML authentication, and audit logs. They have an easy-to-use API and they're trusted by big dev tools like Vercel, as well as smaller, fast-growing dev tools like Knock. So if you're looking to cross the enterprise chasm and make yourself enterprise ready, check out WorkOS. We've also done an episode with Michael, the founder of WorkOS, where he shares a lot of tips around crossing the enterprise chasm, landing your first enterprise deals, and making sure that you're ready for them. Thanks, WorkOS, for sponsoring the podcast, and back to the show.
So the Greptile energy drinks came out of a YC office hours. We were thinking about how we basically had built a product which, if you're the right person for whom this, if you have the problem that this product solves, which we'd proven that person exists, that they would use it and it would work for them. We'd spent the time to do that. So we had wanted to start focusing on getting just more people to hear about the product. And the energy drink idea just was given to us by our group partner. He said, what would be crazy if you had energy drinks, which was energy drink for coders. And then we said, oh, what if it said drink this to ship faster?
That's so good.
And so the first pass, we just printed out a bunch of stickers, and then we bought cold brew cans from Costco, and then we sandpapered the outside of it, and then put the new label on it manually. And they didn't look very good, but they were a good start. And we dropped them off at a hackathon. We did do things that don't scale. I literally sat and wrapped a bunch of cans, and but to see the concept would work. And the concept worked. The people really liked it, and it was memorable. And long after that, people would still come up to us and be like, "Oh, I saw your energy drinks at the hackathon." One thing that we did wrong was people thought we were an energy drinks company, and so I think we should have been clearer on the packaging that we're primarily a developer tools company. We just also make energy drinks. So we fixed that a little bit in our next label. So this time we're like, okay, this works, so we should try to scale this up a little bit. And so we found this manufacturer in Illinois who would make us a custom energy drink. And so we just made 200 milligrams of caffeine, lime flavor, and get them wrapped in our I made a design in Canva and just did that. That was the second iteration. Again, successful. And then now we're doing the third iteration. We had a designer actually make a proper label for it. It wasn't just hacked together in Canva. So like at every step, we just said, okay, we've proven that this is worth additional marginal effort. And so we'll take it to the next step. But the realization that came from the energy drinks thing, I think that was actually fairly pivotal in how we decided to then go to market, because the energy drinks idea is so outlandish. It kind of like opens up everything as a possibility of what you can do to get people's attention and get people to use your product. Clearly, there are no rules if you're allowed to, as a developer tool company, just make energy drinks and ship them to people. And so I think there were a couple. So that was the first thing that came out of that. And the second thing was, I started to look at go-to-market, especially like the marketing level of go-to-market, which is just getting more people to hear about your product, as essentially a multiple of how many people see it times how many people retain it. And I think people index a little too heavily on the first one, which is why Google Ads seems so appealing, because for like very cheap, you can get millions of people to see your thing. But people probably won't retain it because there's nothing novel about a Google ad usually. And you can get creative with the copy and increase the mental retention a little bit, but it's still not very, very memorable. The energy drink footprint is much smaller. It's just everyone that physically saw the energy drink, which is maybe a few thousand people, and you spend hundreds of dollars on it. And so the cost per impression, so to speak, was very low. But you never forget an energy drink from a developer tools company. It's just like, it's so weird. You will not forget it. And so we took that to the extreme this time around. I don't know if you saw this, but we built a box and we filled it with cookies. And the box has a Greptile logo on top. It's green. And the inside flap is a picture of Steve Ballmer's face, which is a frame from his famous developers speech. And then we bought a bunch of light activated speakers from AliExpress. And we recorded the actual sound clip from the speech on it. So when you'd open the box, you'd see cookies, you'd see Steve Ballmer's face, and you start hearing the speech. And we made like 50 of these I think we sent out half of them yesterday, and we're doing the other half today. And again, the footprint is pretty small. Like that's the only, like it costs us like $30, $40 per box to make this, including the cookies. Because we also wanted to get like really good cookies. Because you want people to associate you with like deliciousness.
You don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah. Like because we could just get Costco cookies and it would be like 10 times cheaper. But then people associate you with Costco cookies, which are good, but like they could associate you with like fancy downtown San Francisco French bakery cookies. And so we decided to go down that path instead. But like at the end of the day, it's again, like you drop this off in an office, people see it, they won't forget it. It's like low number of impressions, very high retention percentage.
Yeah, it's so funny that you talked about, for people that haven't seen Greptile's logo, it's like bright green, and you had like the lime energy drink flavor.
Yeah.
You wanted to get that right, and now you wanted to get the right cookies. You're obviously thinking not just about the color of your brand, not just how it looks, but how it tastes as well.
Yeah, I feel like these details matter a lot because I think the details are sticky and they can improve your retention in terms of like how often people remember you, because there's like little things about it. So the cookies thing actually came from Brain Trust sending out pizza to a bunch of companies across the cities. So Brain Trust, they do LM observability. They launched recently, and part of their launch, they shipped out like whole pies of pizza to companies across the city. And so the interesting thing with those guys was they could have just gotten any pizza. There's tons of popular pizza places. They found a specific tiny shop in the Tenderloin that makes just the most incredible pizza. And that's what they picked up. And they did the work of like it's kind of out of the way for everybody, but like they went and got the pizza from there. And the number of times that like people commented, not only that Brain Trust bought them pizza, but it was like some of the best pizza that ever had. And like now you're Brain Trust, and like that's Brain Trust pizza. I'm not even sure what that place was called. I think it's called like Out of Sight or something. But like I think of it as Brain Trust pizza. Yeah.
I wanted to go there, but it's in like the dodgiest part of San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's like you just they're actually solving a problem for people.
Right. Yeah. And so there's two things. One, they went into like kind of a difficult part of the city, and they did the work of like finding the really, really good pizza, and they were like, yeah, we care enough. So, which like, there's a couple of things there. I think one is now I associate them with delicious pizza. And I'm talking about it way more than if this just brought me some pizza. It's the details that made it sticky. And I'm still talking about it weeks later. I probably would not be still talking about pizza weeks later if it had not been this incredible pizza. And second, I think when people, especially when companies buy products, there's like some amount of, and this is true for people too, the things that you get right at the start are like indicative of who you are. There's just like Patrick Collison quote where I think he says more of Stripe's success than people think is like downstream of it being a beautiful product. Because you use it, you see the details, how beautiful it is, and you're like, well, they must really care. I think the word you used was like, it shows people that that you really care, because you cared about what was on the surface. It's a good indicator of what's underneath. Not in all cases, but it's a good indicator. And to someone, there's like this tiny subconscious thing where you associate brain trust now with like good pizza, but you also associate them with like the type of people that go out of their way to create a great experience. And like that might be the case with their software too.
Yeah, 100%. Did you get any initial reactions with the box?
Yeah, some people tweeted it out. There's certainly people talking about it across platforms. Not too many impressions yet. I think probably about like 35, 40,000. But I think we can get it farther up. We also were very targeted with who we sent it to. So we sent it to existing customers, and we sent it to customers that are like very ideal fit for us. Surprisingly, so the number of companies that are truly in person is surprisingly small. They're like over 50 people. So we actually, I think, are hitting pretty much all of them. I think every software company that's like 50 to 500 people that are like that have San Francisco in office presence, we're basically hitting all of them.
Yeah, that's how did you just like curiosity like do the research on like that? It seems like quite hard to figure out actually.
Yeah, it was difficult. We used Apollo and Clay and a bunch of stuff. Like actually, the first half of this is pretty similar to a normal sales problem. And then I don't know if you've used Paradigm. They're like an AI spreadsheet company. They build basically, it's like a spreadsheet and every cell has an AI agent in it. So we basically put all the companies down on the first column of the spreadsheet. And the second column, we were like, find their address. And third column was like, are they in person most days of the week? I'm not sure how it finds this information, but like it does. And it's pretty accurate.
It worked.
So yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of crazy. It's like a spreadsheet with a person that can operate a spreadsheet built into it. It's really crazy.
Okay. That's super cool. I didn't know about Paradigm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you are doing a lot of like quite, you're doing sales, right? Like how has that been? Have you got any like lessons that you picked up while doing that?
Yeah, I'm sort of a reluctant salesperson in some ways, because when we started the company, it was me and my two co-founders, and all three of us are software people. I was the worst of the three of us at programming. So that means I had to be the one that had to do all the sales stuff. Which probably for the best. I think the product would have come out a lot worse if I was one of the ones that was engineering. But so I started doing sales. I think at first I was sort of, especially if you're a technical person, you maybe don't look at sales in a very positive light. You're picturing sort of like a crafty like car salesman. But I think there's a couple of mindset shifts that happen. One is if you like winning like as just like a thing, as an experience, you probably will enjoy sales, because there's this like, you work really hard, you try to solve a problem. The problem you're solving is there's an organization that you think your product can benefit, and like you have to will the organization into like starting to adopt it. It's actually a surprisingly tricky problem. It's an engineering problem. It's also a human problem and like a people engineering problem. So you start to enjoy it for that reason. And second is salespeople are actually, their job isn't to convince people to buy their product and like push down people's throats. The actual problem the salespeople have is finding the people that want your product and then conveying to them what your product does and how it can solve their problem. If your product actually helps people, then a salesperson's job is to find the people that need the help the most and then like help them. Like it's actually just connecting supply and demand. Especially, and that is again, if your product is actually good and it helps people. So I think that the mindset shifts are good. And over time, like you get good at it if you learn from the backdrop, because the speed at which you learn that you're bad at sales is immediate. Like you go into a sales call and you're pitching someone your product. At the end of it, they don't really get it or they're not into it. And you're like, okay, that was a negative sample. My loss function value is high. I need to like fix something. So within a few sales calls, you should probably start to learn the patterns of like what people respond to and what aspects of your product they resonate with, and like what are the indicators you can find about people before you talk to them that will tell you whether or not they're the right person to be using your product. So I think the iterative learning aspect of it, and then the problem solving aspect of like getting an organization to adopt your product is actually like very interesting. I'm trying to enjoy it a lot. I'm very much not looking forward to the day that like I have to eventually let go of it and have someone else do it instead.
Yeah, you'll probably still be doing that. Always do the big deals. Come in and close Amazon and stuff.
yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess when you get to like 50-person plus companies, perhaps there's a few people involved. How have you kind of managed to do that? Because I know that's something that can be quite tricky for founders.
Yeah, I think there's the good thing is that in every company there's the same type of person that's involved, and so you start to learn patterns and what each person cares about and how you can best serve their needs. There's always going to be the engineering leader that really cares about your product and wants to adopt it. In some cases, that is the engineering leader, it's the VP or the CTO. In other cases, they report to the VP or the CTO. In the latter, then there's also a CTO or VP who's very pragmatic and needs to be convinced that this is something that's actually going to help them and is going to be worth the money and the time that they put into it. And then there's usually going to be someone on procurement and someone on InfoSec. Procurement just essentially needs a pricing that's predictable, that they can trust, and like they will want some sort of discount if it's a larger company. And InfoSec just has a set of questions they need to have good answers for. The good thing about InfoSec is everyone kind of has the same questions. Like we don't really get thrown a net new question. So after you've cleared out the basic things that companies care about on a security level, especially because we're fairly invasive in terms of we're scanning your code base is your most valuable IP. And so it's very important that we have good answers to all the security questions. And so once you've answered them for like 1, 2, 3 companies, you've basically covered like the P99, and every new company will just have the same question that you can answer them. So it becomes fairly formulaic after a point for this size of company. I think the complexity starts at like when it's a few hundred people and there might just be like a new sort of process you have to navigate. And there are enough people and then you now have to worry about how they interact with each other. And so the problems get like the number of nodes goes up, the number of edges goes up like essentially quadratically, and so like it makes the problems like much more complicated when you get to larger sizes. So in those cases though, you can actually like really good software companies are often really just multiple companies in a trench coat in some ways, and so you just have to find the like smallest independent unit that can make their own decisions. And just work with that first, and then like essentially go piecewise instead of trying to like get into the entire like brute force your way to the entire organization all at once.
Yeah, I love that. I love the multiple organizations in a trench coat. That's so good. Is that your quote? That's such a good one.
Yep. I guess the trench coat framework is popular.
Okay, that's good. And then one thing when we spoke last time, you were talking about like how companies are buying AI stuff and like how they do it now might be different to how they do it a bit later.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. We've already seen pretty meaningful differences in how engineering leaders are thinking about buying AI developer tools. About 6 months to a year ago, they were maybe like dipping their feet into trying Copilot or Cursor or something of that kind. Like the core generation is the first thing that they try. So when we were trying to do sales at that time, pretty much no one was interested because they were just starting out, and something that we were sort of in a second order effective AI, which is we're doing like code reviews and diagnostics. We're essentially giving people the framework to build their own custom internal AI developer tooling. And that isn't something that is immediately obvious to be useful to you until you're done adopting Copilot or Cursor. So once that happened and like Copilot and Cursor became like, or Cody, other tools that are code generation tools in your editor, once they became super popular and virtually all of the people that are target customers for us were adopting them, the next thing they wanted to do was maybe augment code reviews, do test automations. And then so the process becomes significantly easier for us over time. There's a couple of things that are apparent. I think 2 things need to be basically necessarily true for someone to buy developer tools, for at least to buy our product. One is they've already adopted 1 or 2. Because I think it's hard for us to imagine as like AI people in San Francisco, but like there's people that have never applied AI to their day jobs, and most people haven't, and they can't imagine just the absolutely ridiculous productivity enhancement that it is. And so you have to try it. And then second, you have to come out of it with like conviction that this is going to change your productivity completely. In many cases, that comes from like senior leadership. So we have customers where the CEO just has a mandate and says, look, this is going to transform everything about how we operate this company. We need everyone to be like looking for the best vendors that can help us do that. And if that's the mindset someone's coming into your call with, then you don't have to convince them of underlying value. You actually just have to tell them that like you are different from everything else and better, and you're the perfect person to be. And it's like a different problem than if you were trying to like tell someone, hey, you have this problem, we can help you solve this problem in this way. You first have to convince them they have the problem, and then you have to convince them that, because they may not know that they have the problem in many cases, which used to be the case but now they're like, okay, we program software, it takes a long time, and here's a like solution space of tools that are designed to make that faster. It's like intrinsically useful, and the question isn't like, is this going to help me or not? Is this going to help me? Like, is this specific thing good enough to help me?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's evolving. So like even, you said a year ago, it's like they're starting to adopt Copilot.
Yeah, every quarter it changes, I think.
Yeah, where do you see it growing? Do you see it changing?
Yeah, it's hard to predict, but I have a couple of frameworks that make sense in my head. I think a fully automated AI software engineer, which is like instructions in, software out, I don't see that existing, not because I don't think it's technically possible. I just think that if you can build something that can create perfect software from a prompt, you probably don't want to sell it as a software engineer. That's pretty much AGI. Like it's like, if I could build something that can create perfect accounting software, first shot, just from saying, here's my like type of tax paperwork that I want to process, make software to do it. That's just an accountant. Like, why would I go through the work of having, like, why would QuickBooks need to, like, why would TurboTax need to exist and like buy this thing that generates software? Like, it sounds like I'm maybe a step away from just like fully automated everything, instead of having the intermediate step of building software first and then like packaging and pricing and selling the software and then having people buy the software. It seems like a lot more work. What I see happening in the interim, at least, and maybe in the longer term too, for increasingly complex pieces of software, is like everything that only humans can do will be the only things that humans do, and everything else gets automated away. And that leaves all of the creative work for humans to do for software engineering. Like, they don't have to worry about like how much time is spent refactoring, debugging, like on deployments, like all this stuff that we should just be able to make go away, and only the creative aspect should be around. I'm trying to think. It's like there are crafts which have achieved this in some ways, which is like, so I used to produce music in high school, and if you produce music, you realize that like you can do it now with just a computer, and you can basically produce like studio quality music with nothing else other than a computer and like and a piece of couple $100 worth of software. But you needed a way more apparatus back in the day. Like, you needed to have like an 8-track and a studio and like an vocal isolation booth. Like, you needed so much stuff to create just basic music that you can now do on a computer. And the thing that changed was that we were able to digitize music, and like we were able to have it in like these completely malleable file formats. That was like the main thing. And of course, like computers became very powerful. I think that's the parallel here, which is AI takes away all of the apparatus that was required to engineer within the next, like, I think couple of years that'll happen. At the same time, I think we structure software companies not as a collection of developers, but rather as like developers and the teams that are made up of them. And the reason I draw this distinction is we often think of ourselves as all AI developer tools are either above or below Git. If you're below Git, you are a developer's tool. You are Cursor or you're Copilot. You're something the developer uses to execute and do their job. A good indicator of whether a piece of software is below or above Git is if it's below Git, then everyone should be able to use a different one. You don't need consistency across your organization. If it's above Git, everyone needs to use the same one. And above Git doesn't just mean post Git, because like linear is above Git. You can think of the journey of a ticket starting at like a ticket is created in linear, it like is assigned to an engineer, and then it dips below Git. And now the engineer does stuff in their editor, whatever their setup is. And then they float it above Git by making a pull request. And now it's in GitHub, and then it's going to go here, and then it's going to go there. And you'll have incident management in Sentry. You'll update your documentation or Notion. All the stuff is above Git. And there are really good vendors below Git. We use Cursor. Cody is really good. Copilot is really good. But above Git, you're no longer selling to developers. Like your customers and developers, it's development teams. Because teams buy GitHub, not software engineers. And software engineers might make the decisions, but the customer is the team. Like the reason GitHub exists is you wouldn't need GitHub if you just had one engineer. Their existence is reliant on there being a team. And so we build developer tools for teams, which is the key distinction here. And I think that's the mindset shift where I think developers realized that AI was going to change everything. And of course, organizations are slower to realizing than individuals are. And so now for the first time, we're seeing organizations realize that they need developer tooling. And they need developer tooling not for their individual engineers, but for their teams. They need to augment the stuff that's happening above Git because it's taking so long. I think that's been like a key shift that has occurred in the last maybe like 6 months.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like the way you frame it of like above and below Git. Maybe this is like I don't know if this is really like the topic we usually talk about, but digging into like the creative work, I just kind of wanted to go back to that as well, because like it's something that I think about all the time, is like what actually is the creative work of a software engineer? Like, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a sort of a question of abstraction, because you could say, well, the design of a database schema is creative work, but you could say, well, with the correct abstractions, it isn't. Like, does there exist a perfect answer for database schema? Arguably, yes. Like, for any given well enough defined problem, there's a perfect answer for it. So I think that's actually it. Is creative work is anything where there isn't an objectively correct answer. In at least in the realm of software engineering. So if something has an objectively correct answer, there's an objectively correct way to deploy something that is just the most performant. Like with a well-defined enough problem, there is an objectively correct answer. I think all of those cases should probably be something that AI does, or computers in general do. And everything where I think the word taste gets thrown around a lot in engineering now, but like I think that's actually it. It's like taste. There's no objectively correct answer. There's just like well thought out opinion. Obviously, user interfaces usually are opinion. It's hard to define like perfect UI or perfect UX. Perfect form factor is also hard to determine. Just as hard to define the problems in the first place. And even if you did, then it would be hard to define like what the quality of a solution looks like. So I think that's where I would draw the distinction. Engineers should just be doing things that there aren't perfect answers for. Because if there's a perfect answer, then we should be able to like deterministically arrive at it with the computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we were launching, if you and I were to do a startup tomorrow where we're going to allow people to create their own boxes with Steve Ballmer, voices or whatever they want, they can pick their own voice, they can upload their own voice. I guess like in the future, how are we just going to describe exactly what we want? Like, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess it would depend on at what point the models stop improving at the rate that they're improving today. Like, it will eventually happen. I don't know if it's going to happen this year or 10 years from now, but at some point the model will stop improving at the pace that they are today, and will arrive at some like generally stable point. Whereas, this is about as powerful as this thing is going to be, until there's the next major breakthrough. So I don't know what that stopping point will be. If it's very, very high, I can see it being like everyone has this perfect machine guard accessible to them in their homes. And you don't need a startup for this at all. Every individual person can be like, I conceived of an idea of a Steve Ballmer box of cookies. Like, if I can describe it well enough, then out comes all of the software and all of the maybe 3D printing instructions I need for it. So maybe that's what it looks like. You don't need organizations for execution of building software. You need enterprises for everything else. And I do wonder if that to an extent might happen to software before that too, because like it is way easier to build software today than it was 30 years ago. Just the abstractions available to us, high level programming languages, the existence of like pay-as-you-go cloud, the tooling that exists around building software is like extraordinary compared to even like 10 or 15, 20 years ago. So this is just another step in that direction. Which is why I'm not convinced that like this is fundamentally different either, because like the journey from like punch cards to Python was surely greater than the journey from like Python to natural language in terms of how much easier it makes it a program. I mean, imagine trying to build like a snake game in punch cards versus in Python, you can do it so easily. And then with Claude, you can do it in one shot. Like you just describe, hey, generate snake game in Python. That's the end of your job. But it seems like punch cards to Python was the bigger jump there. So this is just like another higher level of abstraction. So the question is like, what abstraction does it stop? Like, can we really make it so we just give it our general goals? Like, what if you take it beyond the snake game? Because like, hey, I want you to entertain me right now, and then it like decides to build you a snake game. Like that's the next level of abstraction there. So I wonder at what point it stops.
Yeah, and then also with like, yeah, I guess like it's like with developer tools, it's like, so let's say you want to build your own, pull request, custom like pull request reviewer. Then, I guess it's like, can you just say the right prompt and then you're going to get your own version of Greptile, in a sense of like, it's like, and they'll go like deploy all the infrastructure and they'll just do everything. And, I guess, because that's the question that I think about, because some people ask me like, why are you interested in developer tools? Like developers are going to be obsolete, and so are the tools.
Yeah.
And
I think that is a real possibility. And I'm worried that like people are underestimating. I think people generally underestimate the odds of bad things happening. And every person that has an occupation today underestimates the likelihood of it going away as an occupation. And when I hear developers like, yeah, no, developers are not going anywhere, it's like, I think you might be overestimating like what you do, but more importantly, you're underestimating what software can do. I think you're probably right that you're not going to get replaced, because what developers do actually does require enormous amounts of creativity. It's a very difficult job.
Yeah.
But
by the way, I actually don't have a view on this.
But you'd be surprised. Yeah. Like there are a lot of like software developers that was like, oh, no, this is, and it often means that they're rejecting AI as a concept entirely. They're like, well, AI generated code is just slop. And it's like, well, I trust you that you're writing better code than AI is writing. But like, look around you and tell me that the median developer is writing better code than AI is writing. And that's today. Like this is where we're so early, like in the curve of. I mean, we haven't even maxed out our own benchmarks for software engineering quality from AI. Like we can only picture what a really good version of this could look like. And there's going to be a day when we'll max that out, and then there'll be another benchmark that we'll want to hit. And it's going to be like, this is the very first like SweBench. We were at like, I think for like 43% is like the state of the art for SweBench. We're like barely halfway to our own benchmark on how good this thing can get.
Can you explain what SweBench is actually?
So this set of, this is how it started out. I think they actually modified a little bit, but it started out as like a set of real world GitHub issues, and then at the other end of it, they're like good pull requests made with those issues. And it's a benchmark to see AI models, AI software engineers, how close they can get in one shot, or I guess in the case of agents, a few shots, how close they can get to like that perfect pull request. So I'm not entirely sure how it's scored, but I would assume it's something to do with like how close the code was and whether it worked or not, whether it did the thing that the issue intended. And 43% is currently the state of the art, which at least I don't know if that's a verified number, but that was like the most recent high number that I saw.
And is it growing fast? Like how long ago since it was like 20%?
Yeah, I think Devon, when it launched, was at 13%, and that was maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So it's going pretty fast. There's also there's a distinction between like verified results and non-verified results, because I think that there's potentially not to say that the 43% people did this, but there's potentially some amount of leakage from training data into going into like the test data going into training data and stuff. I don't know what the highest verified is, but I know it is growing really fast. Like I think we're well on our way to like max out this benchmark from what it looks like. There's also like it's an enormous economic opportunity. There's tons of smart people working on like Max and SweBench. I would hate to do that. I would hate to be one of the companies that are trying to. Yeah, it's extremely competitive that to be on that path.
Yeah, that's because I guess you're kind of competing with OpenAI.
Yeah, no. It's like in the sense of like I would hate to be a company that is trying that where like my success hinges on being the best at SweetBench.
Yeah,
Where like I'm building an AI software engineer, some sort of code gen tool. It's just that there's too many extraordinarily smart people that with like billions of dollars behind them that are trying to solve that problem.
Yeah. No, totally. So I just wanted to ask you like 2 more questions. The first one is, what advice you have for other founders?
Ooh, God. I guess the only ones would be, one, you should make something that you or someone you know really wants and will pay for. Launch fast and charge people early. So that you can charge them like less later, but you should charge them more now just to prove that they actually want the thing that you want. Second would be, you should find great co-founders. They'll make your life much easier. Even one, like just pick your closest, smartest friend, and that could be the person. And 3, don't raise money too early. Wait until you actually need it. And it's like the only thing that's standing between you. It actually might be day one, in case like if in our case we had to raise a little bit because we were like coming out of college with no savings and needed to stay alive. But I think we still probably raised too much. Like looking back, probably would have done less. And so that's probably what I'd recommend to people is don't do it too early. And I definitely see a lot of founders that where because capital is available, they take it. And it's a capital scarcity mindset. And Silicon Valley has not had a capital scarcity problem ever in its existence. And so I don't think that that's something to worry about.
Yeah. If you're building a big business,
yeah,
there's going to be money.
There's always like infinite money for good founders and zero money for bad ones. And so if you just become a good founder, you probably don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, 100%. And then the last one is, besides Greptile, of course, what other dev tools are you excited about?
I've been really, there's so many, but obviously I use a lot of them. I use Mintlify a lot. I love that so much. Browserbase is one that I've seen recently that I want to start playing around with. If Raycast counts as a dev tool, I kind of use it like one. So I guess it sort of does. Yeah, there's tons that I'm excited about. Cursor, obviously, I've been using Cursor a lot and it's really good. I do wish it was lighter weight. It just it's starting to feel a little clunky. So if anyone who works at Cursor or knows them,
yeah,
you tell them to remove some stuff.
Daksh has a clunkiness problem with it.
It's hard. Yeah.
That's a really good one. Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you very much. And where can people learn more about Greptile and about you?
At greptile.com. All links lead to greptile.com.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for your time, and thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much everyone for listening. Thank you. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you, Jack. It's great talking to you.